The following talk was given at Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado. Please visit our website at milehighchurch.org.
Eric Butterworth, the great spiritual teacher, said that things may happen around you and things may happen to you, but the most important things in life are those that happen inside of you. And what a wonderful space tonight, wherever we declare sanctuary, to go within and to experience whatever transformation we may be seeking to get to greater peace, greater love, greater healing, or just greater joy. And so grateful to share the stage with the incredible Reverend Zemirah Jazwierska, who's sharing a message tonight, and Reverend Chris Plim. So glad you're here as well. And, Zemirah, you and I are starting this week a class on spiritual practices, so I thought it'd be a great discussion tonight just to talk about, in turbulent times, challenging times, in these times, what for both of you are the spiritual practices that you are turning to most?
That is such an awesome question. What I have found a lot of support and comfort in practices of grounding, and really being able to go within. And I have this visualization that I like to do where it's about moving my roots into the earth and imagining the branches into the sky, kind of like the tree of life. And it just helps, I think, too, in these times where we can have a lot of feelings, that it helps me to be present to those feelings and have a spiritual way to hold them and to work with them.
Yeah, I love that. There's an old, I believe it's an African saying, but it says about giving our children, we want to give them roots and we want to give them wings. And sometimes when we get rooted, we can start to fly and transcend any of the troubles that are before us, but especially to connect with our spirit. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
How about for you, Reverend Chris?
I think my favorite spiritual practice right now is there's a park close to my house, and I walk down to the park with my dog, sit on a bench, and contemplate the beauty of nature, the vastness of the universe, and just feel into the experience. It's physical, it's spiritual, it's emotional, and that's my favorite practice right now.
I love it. And what do you do if you get distracted? If your mind goes back to something that's bothering you or just from keeping you present? Or you just
breathe deeply and go back to where you were. But you have to first recognize that you've drifted off. Then you breathe deeply and go back to where you were.
I like it. And similar to both of you, for me, I've been using the term anchoring a lot, and it's just the idea that it's so easy today to be engaged in the world and to give our spirits away to what's going on, which is understandable, to a news headline, to someone we're in relationship with, something that's bothering us, and for me, just to have that experience of anchoring, just to call my spirit back to center, and we use this word center. I don't know if it's meant to be a physical place. I think it's a metaphorical place, to just simply recognize that I can call my spirit back from any circumstance that may be going on in life, get a sense of renewal, a sense of love, a sense of hope, and then if I want, through breathing, actually breathe it back into those circumstances, and to realize that the conditions of our life are something we possess. They're not something that needs to possess us, and that's when I am really starting to lose it, when something going on starts to possess me and I no longer feel, ownership of my own spirit.
Absolutely. It's those spiritual tools that help us to move beyond that story of our life and help us to experience ourselves as that deeper, in that deeper way.
Yeah, and one of the things, we started our class online this week. We started it last night, and it's not too late to sign up at some point. But one of the things I would suggest is, for many of us, we have some sort of spiritual practice in the morning, meditation or prayer, but I invite us to look at our free time during the day, and to ask ourselves, how much of that free time do I spend escaping life, just watching Netflix or wanting to turn off, not wanting to feel, and how much time do I spend in mindfulness, maybe reading a great book, or writing in my journal, or taking a walk to the park. And when that escape time for me is outweighing the mindfulness time, then I know I'm kind of losing my soul in my life. And the thing that I have to remember is there's that part of me that maybe is tricking myself to think that, that mindful time, that's going to exhaust you. You're already burnt out. But really, it's what brings the real energy to me in my life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Provides a real centering experience. Very centering.
Yes, and I know our own Jennifer Burnett. I'm just going to draw you into the conversation because I know that you're going to answer this, in talking about that spiritual practice of music and utilizing that. And have you been using that to kind of uplift you during this time and these days?
Absolutely, and that happened last night and today when I really reminded myself of this next song, actually, that I'm going to sing, that it is such a beautiful, deepening way to bring yourself present to the moment. Because as I have shared before in other situations and such, when I'm singing a song, there's absolutely nothing else that can come into my mind. And if it does, then I'm not present to it, which is spiritual practice, right? And the moment it does is when things get off kilter, is when I lose a lyric or forget the melody or forget the form of the song or whatever. But you have to be completely present when you're really in the music. So for me, that's probably my biggest spiritual practice. I'm a Netflix girl, so lots of TV at my house. But spiritual practice for me is definitely the music. But you knew that already.
I knew that. That's why I knew I saw you over there, so I knew I could draw you in. But there's, such an aspect of that in our lives. Just what Jennifer said, to be in the spirit, to be in the music, you've got to be present. And so ask yourself, what are those things that I'm doing to stay present? Not just to worry about the future or to be regretful about the past, but to be in the present, to really love ourselves. Love your body by eating good food, taking good care of it. Love your mind by sparing, all of the sea of stuff going on, but to give your mind some good, healthy food, and love your spirit, whether that's dancing to music or just giving yourself that time in silence and quiet, or calling up and talking to a good friend. But that ability, believe it or not, to love ourselves is going to give us all the tools that we need to survive not only the challenges that face us now, but the ones that are forthcoming as well. So any other tips for people who may be struggling with their spiritual practice, Chris or Zemirah?
Well, you mentioned journaling, Josh, and I really think journaling is something I used early on, and now it's a fallback pattern that if, nothing else is seeming to get me focused on the present, I can go back to journaling and get really into the present again.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just second that the key there, that hint is the joy. Is what brings you joy, brings you back to your soul. And so you just reach for those things that enliven you. And like you said, it brings more energy and it brings you back connected within.
Yeah, there's that old movie, Chariots of Fire, and it's about two runners, and one's, they're both religious, and thank you. Wow. Thank you. And it's got that classic song that goes to it. And one of the missionaries, he's talking about his relationship with God and running. He says, when I run, I feel his pleasure. And he's talking about God. And it's a great question for all of us. What do you do that causes you to feel the divine's pleasure in you, awakening in you, and keeping you alive? So whatever that is, do more of it.
My topic tonight is about living life on the edge, the powerful to transformational power of thresholds. And what a threshold 2020 has been for all of us. It has been this time of such great change, and we have had to ride those waves of emotion. And the appearance of wounds and of trauma has risen now to the surface for our deeper healing. I wonder where in your life you're experiencing those places of threshold, those places that have that call to let go, that may be a little bit worn out, those places that are asking you to be more present, more vulnerable, more available, those places that need to be seen, to be acknowledged, and to be heard. As with all thresholds have this unique ability to pull us right into this in-between place, because there is this piece of a threshold where we are letting go of the old, and simultaneously it is paired with this invitation to embrace something new. It is that tomb and the womb. But it's that in-between place where the old hasn't quite left yet and the new isn't here, that I want to talk about this evening. That it's those places where we feel that we are on the edge, as if maybe we are shedding a skin or we are being stretched in a painful way, that there's deconstruction of some sort in our life. And it can be frightening to face these borderlands of the unknown within ourselves, within our relationships, within our communities, within our country, and within the world around us. So how can we use these edges that we have right now as invitations, as initiations, in order to experience more and go deeper into experience God? So how can we stand? The question is, though, that how can we be present to that space in between? How can we stand there in that in-between space and feel that uncomfortability, that vulnerability? You know, that liminal space comes from the Latin limen, which means threshold. Because when we are able to stand in that in-between space, we're able to receive its gifts. We're able to deepen our conscious understanding, and we're able to be present to that grief, to that anger, to the sadness, to all those emotions that are coming up within us. Because to stand in those vulnerable places long enough, they actually begin to be allowed to fade out into our deeper awareness of spirit. But how can we do that without falling prey to numbness, or maybe too much of the Netflix, or too much avoidance, that resistance, or without becoming too attached to the way things are simply because they're comfortable, but not because they are without pain or without that desire to change? How can we move into the new and be in this presence of threshold without jumping too far ahead into the future? You know, going beyond this present moment into fear and into anxiety, asking too many questions about the unknown or what's around the next corner. I want to explore how we can reach in and we can reach out. How we can reach in and how we can reach out for the divine. How we can be present in these in-between spaces, in these threshold moments, in order to stay in that uncomfortableness long enough, so that it can lead us into a deeper transformation. It can lead us into that crucible of the divine. Because when we're in that space of that crucible of the divine, we are able to allow the divine what it does, which is to hold us in times of transition in our awareness of it, and also to co-create with us as we are stepping into the new. Towards the end of May, I became an empty nester. My youngest daughter, Maddie, graduated high school and moved on to begin her studies in music. And after weeks of a full house where I had my partner Todd and his son Patrick and my daughter Maddie and the 2 dogs, and we had all this joyful family time, in this moment, in this present moment, and towards the end of May, everyone needed to move on in order to deepen into the experience of various life transitions. But I tell you, watching my daughter drive away with all of her things packed up in her car, and as she turned to give me a hug, she said, "Mom, thank you for all that you have done, but I need to do this transition process on my own." And I can tell you, in that moment, I really felt the closing of that chapter I have known as parenthood in that form, and I felt it completely. I came face to face with a grief that I've been trying to avoid for the last 4 years, since my older daughter left and went to live abroad. And you know, I knew it was coming. I felt it, and so I made some plans. I made plans last fall. I decided that I was going to travel, I was going to lead a pilgrimage, I was going to create cool stuff, because I felt the gravity. I knew what this was going to be like. But as we all know, life had different plans this year. The quarantine came and I had to let go of all those plans, and I had to face being with that chapter so that I could experience it more fully. You know, Joseph Campbell said that famous quote that says, "We must be ready to get rid of the life we have planned so that we can have the life that is waiting for us." Well, the life that is waiting for us often is that call to be in that threshold place, that call to go deeper and to experience more of the divine, that call to be with those places within ourselves that have been separated, and the call to integrate them and bring them back into our wholeness through being with them. So I'd like to say I got straight down, I rolled up my sleeves, and I got into my spiritual practice. But I didn't. I became the Tasmanian devil of housekeeping. And if anyone knows me, they will know that that is really far from my inherent nature. I began to organize, throw things out, organize stuff, clean things. I regrouted the bathroom. I got rid of all the stuff, and then I ran out of energy. After I'd touched up the paint and I'd cleaned up all the junk drawers and the pasta was organized in alphabetical order, I eventually ran out of steam and I had to slow down. And what happens often when we have to slow down is that we come face to face with that tidal wave of grief that has been being avoided by all that busyness. And so my mind in those moments began to be flooded with memories. And I began to move into that moment of processing the empty nest. I thought of all the sleepovers, all the bedtime stories, all of those things that were moving into a different chapter, but I allowed myself to be present to them. In the event that I would move into a deeper transformational process of refeathering this next nest for the next chapter of my life. And I am in that process. It is a process. I haven't arrived somewhere. It's a continual riding those waves that come and go as I move through it. You know, in ancient Irish and Celtic spiritualities, thresholds were seen as potent places. They were those places, those in-between places where you move from one space to another, one time to another. But not only were they potent places where the veils were thin between the human material world and the spiritual mystical world, they were also a spiritual practice. Thresholds were seen as a spiritual practice to move into that liminal space, that in-between space of being in and deepening in with the divine. Christine Walters Painter writes in her book, The Soul's Slow Ripening, that in a 7th century letter, Saint Columba described his people as ultimi habitores mundi. They were in the inhabitants of the world's edge. They lived on the fringes of the ancient world. And they did that purposefully because to them, they embraced this deeper perspective. It gave them that perspective that Jesus talked about, is that they could live in the world, but not of it. And they could deepen in their spiritual practice to achieve that awareness. And so here we are in these thresholds of life. And so to move into those thresholds this evening, I'd like to talk about some of the R&Rs that I came across as I have been being with the thresholds in my life. And the first one is to retreat and reach in. Retreat is about approaching the doors of your soul again and again to spend time with the divine. Abriendo las puertas. Abriendo las puertas, to close those wounds. And so, behold, I stand at the door and I knock, and it is open unto me. So we move into spiritual practice again and again to retreat and to meet our soul. You know, in literature, we have been gifted with all of these beautiful images of these doorways that, you know, there was C.S. Lewis's wardrobe into Narnia, and there was Lewis Carroll's rabbit hole down into Wonderland. There was J.R.R. Tolkien's Doors of Durin and into the Mines of Moria. And of course, there's the infamous platform 9 3/4, where Harry Potter had to go in there to meet with his shadow and light sides. And each one of these symbolic journeys allows the character to face the shadows and to find a deeper awakening within. The door to the soul. It's that hero's journey of sorts that if should we choose it, we go in and we meet with those things that are blocking our greater joy. We meet with those dragons and we face them so that we can feel more of our divine self. But when we retreat, as we have found in the quarantine time, the shelter in place time, we can feel very much alone. All my life, I have lived with other people. I have been having to face that deeper shadow of anxiety. And it has been a constant companion on this life journey. And in this time where I have had to sit and be very much alone, I have had to go within and really be with this deeper legacy of alone and loneliness and abandonment things and anxiety that has really been through generations throughout my family. And it's a struggle. And often I don't want to sit there long enough so that it can melt into that presence of God. You know, Joel Goldsmith writes about this in his book, Practicing the Presence of God. He says, God is, of that you can be sure. This is only true in your experience, however, to the degree in which you contemplate, meditate, and keep your mind stayed on God, living and moving and having your being in the conscious realization that God will never leave you or forsake you. God's grace is your sufficiency, but it is only made practical in your life by your contemplation of that grace. So we go within, we stand at the door, we knock, and we know that it fortifies and it builds our relationship with Spirit. And we are reminded again and again that we are never alone. And so, although we have to face the inner dragons ourselves and by ourselves with God, I truly believe that the other R that we are calling in tonight is to reach out, because we are all on this hero's journey of deepening and going within. And I truly believe that our strength and our ability to be with the thresholds around us to deal with divisiveness and racism and the political arenas and COVID and our own healing is going to come from connection with others. It's that vibration of heart that makes the fabric of our community. It's unity in community that will heal us. You know, trauma research shows that connection is the most powerful remedy for healing. It's separation that creates wounds and trauma. It's connection and unification that heals it. So reach out. Reach out to your friends. Reach out and find a prayer partner. Reach out to the prayer and care center here. Take a class, stay connected, and stay in conversation. Stay in conversation, because it's by listening to each other. Even if we have different views, different feelings, listen. Because the more we listen, the more we deepen in that connection and our ability to connect. So, by reaching in and reaching out, we are able to take the hands of compassion, humility, vulnerability, connection, openness, and we're able to stay present in that liminal space, that threshold space of healing, to take these next steps, these evolutionary next steps that we're all called to take. And as we reach in and reach out, we're able to take them with grace.
Our community, the Mile High Church community, is all about prayer. And so this evening we're going to have a few short words of prayer. I ask you that as I say this prayer, you call to mind, speak out loud, whatever works for you, any of your loved ones, your friends, your family, yourself that this prayer pertains to. And so let us begin. So Zemirah said so beautifully in her talk, God is. God is our life, our beingness, the luminosity of this universe. God is that one power, that one spirit, that one mind, that one love, that one joy, that one calling us forth in evolution in every point of our lives. And so I know for each of you, for myself, for all of your friends and families, whoever you are praying for this evening, that God is, that you are. We are children of God, emissaries of God, the creation of God, the eyes, ears, hands, mouth, thoughts, actions, deeds of God, right here, right now, in this place. And as I know this, as I proclaim it, as I feel it in my center, I know that the truth is that there is absolute harmony in all of our relationships, that there is nothing, nowhere that God is not, that perhaps there are moments of deeper listening, of deeper connection, of deeper ways of being. I know also that for all of us and those that you pray for this evening, that we have a peace of mind. Yes, there's great transitions going on, that as Zemirah spoke to the thresholds in our lives, we are at another turning point. We all are creating anew, whether it's sheltering in place, creating new events in our lives for connection, whatever it is, but there is peace of mind and centeredness behind all of that. I also know for all that there is abundance, power, and prosperity in our lives. That there is only the recognition of God's goodness as we look around, as we experience this earth. That we see that abundance and that it flows to us, and that it is only our recognition of that abundance, that love, that life that God is. And finally, I know for all the absolute healing of spirit, the healing of our lives, the healing of our emotions, our spiritual selves, knowing that we are reflections of that spiritual self, and there is nothing that can assail it, that the divine is always perfect, whole, and complete, and we are part of that, no matter how it may appear in this physical universe. That is simply to be shed and let go of, and the recognition of the supreme perfection of the divine is ours right now. And so it is with great joy that I give thanks for these words. I give thanks for our empowerment, our enlightenment, our listening to that voice of God. I give thanks for who we are and what we have created. And so it is in this joy, in this thankfulness, that these words are released, for they are created in that mind of God. There is only one mind of God. It is our mind, it is God's mind. And these words are in it, and they are ever active. And so these words are released, and you may say with me at home, and so it is.
Thank you for listening to the Mile High Church podcast. This podcast is made possible by the generous contributions from listeners like you. If you'd like to make a donation, please visit us at milehighchurch.org. Have a fabulous day.